In today's economy, more people than ever are looking to buy and sell businesses. But how do you do it? Welcome to the Deal Board, presented by Transworld Business Advisors. Straight talk about real deals and real people. Listen to stories, interviews, and expert advice to help your business sale, merger, or acquisition process. Now, here are your business exit experts, Andy and Jessica.
Welcome back, everybody. Today on the Deal Board, we have an exciting episode where we're talking about why now is the time to buy a business. Yes, now, in the middle of pandemic, in the middle of COVID and all this uncertainty, now is still a great time to buy a business.
It is. I mean, listen, there's plenty of reasons why to be an entrepreneur, especially during a pandemic. We talked about it, I think, in an earlier podcast about the fact that how many billionaires were made in 2009 and 2010. So there are plenty of opportunities out there. And I don't know about you, and we've been talking to our franchisees across the country. We're seeing very, very solid, established businesses coming to the marketplace. And I think it's, the baby boomers are just now really tired.
Yeah. And we talked about this too, Andy, when the pandemic first hit. Is like we talked about this overlay of the seller tsunami or the baby boomer retirement effect that had been going on for a number of years. And when you lay over this pandemic and really another recession, we had said they could just get tired. Like enough's enough, go through the dot-com bust and 9/11 and 0809. And we are seeing that now where you're having some really solid businesses coming to market. So there's some great opportunities that haven't been available in the past. But on the same side, we've also seen a lot of buyers coming to the market, and it's created a really active and dynamic marketplace for business sales.
Yeah, you would think it would be a buyer's market right now, and it's not. I mean, we have to warn the buyers, and people are calling me saying, I want a good deal, and I want recurring revenues, and I want this and that. And I keep looking at them and saying, yeah, of course you do. Everybody does. And I think that's a factor of a few things. Number one, I think there was a ton of money on the sidelines before we started this, right?
Mm-hmm. There's definitely a lot of money and a lot of people searching and not finding what they wanted, right?
Right. And then secondly, there's a ton of unemployed people, a lot of middle managers, a lot of people who are 40, 50, 60 years old who got downsized. I mean, because when they made cuts, they looked at making the most significant cuts they could. And that's usually middle management.
Yeah. I was talking to a buyer the other day, and they were looking for same thing, recurring revenue, established business, more than 10 years old. We call these like typical buyer requests in our office, and EBITDA values between $500,000 and $2 million. He's like, that market's probably not that competitive. I'm like, no, that's like the most competitive market. Cause when you look at these individual buyers that are retired or laid off from corporate, they still worked for corporate for a good chunk of their career, 10, 20 years. And they have a solid nest egg built up that they can invest in these businesses. So it really creates a lot of people searching for similar things. I mean, there are some deals, right? If you wanted to buy a restaurant right now, you probably could get a really good deal in a buyer's market, right? But some of the major requests that we get and some of these really established baby boomer businesses, it's still very competitive as a buyer to get it, but still a great time because I am seeing a little bit more concessions when it comes to including seller financing or earnouts. And I'm not sure if you guys are seeing that the same in Florida.
We are seeing that. And I think we're seeing that across the board. I get a lot of calls from our franchisees, just bouncing ideas off each other about how to structure certain deals. Somebody emailed me the other day and said, can somebody lease a business for a while they put together the money? And I said, no.
There's no lease.
That's a lot of risk to the seller. But it just shows you that I think what's happening out there is people are taking a look at their lives and they're just reassessing. And they're just saying, listen, on the buy side, I want to get out of what I'm doing and I want to control my future moving forward. On the sell side, people are looking at this saying, I'm done. I have enough money in the bank. I want to go live wherever in the mountains of Colorado, in the valleys of Tennessee or Virginia. I mean, people are looking to kind of get away from it all. And so we're seeing great opportunities and, shout out to young people out there that this is your time. I mean, those Gen Xers or Gen Zs or whatever you want to call them, millennials, it's your time. This is it. You could jump in. I mean, you did it at an early age. I did it at an early age. And I'm telling all those 28 to 40-year-olds that this is your time.
Yeah. And there's a lot of opportunities for the millennial generation to add value, especially in that baby boomer generation businesses. There's a lot of, technology that can be applied where the millennial generation is really good at that. The baby boomer generation built up a great business, great reputation, systems, team, and to be able to add some value from the more technology and more innovative side that the millennial generation bring. It's pretty phenomenal. Some good opportunities. But we also have some great interviews today too, to illustrate to you, and this is kind of in our theme of bringing buyers and sellers to the show so you can hear it from them about their experience. I interview Leo Sharkey. He's from the Massachusetts area. He recently just closed on an HVAC company last month. So he talks us through his thought process of why it was still a good time now to buy a business for him. And he also talks to us about how did he mitigate the risk in the future of a COVID spike or something affecting the business in the long run, and how did he structure that into the deal?
Yes, and I talked to Militello's Bakery about their sale of their big industrial size bakery. And John Mina was the buyer, and he's still doing great. We're talking to him, but John Militello is still hanging around. He's still working in the business, and they're doing much better during the COVID crisis. Actually, a very large commercial bakery decided to go out of business. So they picked up all that work. Yes, the restaurant business is down, but there's plenty of people still buying a lot of bread out there in the world. And of course, we talked to none other than Michael Shea, the guru of social media out there in the world. But, he just goes through why this is a good time. And it's a great interview. It's always great to hear from Michael.
Yeah. Well, let's get to it. And if you guys have any comments or any questions for us, we've gotten more and more requests through the website of people to be on the show or topics to cover. Please continue to reach out to us at thedealboardpodcast.com. But we'll jump into it and hope you enjoyed today's show.
Let's do it.
Transworld Business Advisors is the world's largest business brokerage and mergers and acquisitions firm with over 500 brokers in nearly 200 offices worldwide. Transworld's team handles thousands of business sales every year. To be connected with a qualified business broker or learn more about the buying and selling process, visit tworld.com/the deal board or call 888-719-9098. Welcome back, everybody, to the Deal Board. Thank you so much for joining us again. And as you know, we're going through a series where we're interviewing buyers and sellers of businesses and learning about their stories and learning through the lessons they've learned. So I'm very excited to have Leo Sharkey join us today. He's a recent buyer of an HVAC company. Leo, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
So, Leo, let's just start with your background. What is your background in business and how did you become a buyer of a business and now the owner of your new HVAC company?
Well, I've been a plant manager and a business manager for several different companies throughout my long career. And most recently, I was working for the Small Business Development Center at Clark, which, if you don't know, is a government-funded program, and it's a great resource for people looking for help. But I spent a couple of years there, and I learned even more things that I didn't know about businesses and small businesses and things like that. So I got super interested. And I've kind of always wanted to have my own business, and I recently had the opportunity to go out and start looking. So that's what I did. Last August, I started looking around, and here we are.
So let's talk a little bit about that journey since last August. How many businesses did you look at? Did you buy the first one you found that was a fit? What was that journey like for you?
The first business I found was a paper company. The company sold very high-end imported papers, mostly for invitations, wedding invitations and corporate invitations. So it was interesting. It was not exactly my field. I'm more of an operations guy. This is more of a marketing company, but I figured I could probably learn it or at least get some help. Had good cash flow. The multiple was fair, but during due diligence and the very long extracted negotiations, a bunch of things that came up with that were kind of flags. And to be perfectly honest, I got a little bit of like a tunnel view syndrome where I was like, I'm going to close this business no matter what. And I ignored a couple of things that bothered me. But the process took a long time for a whole bunch of reasons that aren't worth getting into. And the deal finally fell apart the first couple of days of March of this year, where we got to the point where the timeline had been extended, and I was unwilling to put $60,000 up as non-refundable deposits. So deal fell apart. I got my money back. Less than 10 days later, the COVID shutdown hit, and I luckily don't own a company that sells paper for invitations anymore.
Yeah, I guess there's not a whole lot of events for invitations right now, right? Yeah.
No, I am reasonably sure that if I weren't bankrupt, I would be in a hospital from the stress of trying to make the payroll, the loan payments, and everything else. So I'm really glad I didn't get that company.
Yeah, it's one of those lessons of, sometimes things happen for a reason, and maybe the timeline was getting drug out for your benefit, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
My mother is fairly religious and was sort of yelling at St. Anthony about why I didn't get the business. But then when everything fell apart, she was like, "Oh, I see."
Yeah. Oh, I see. So that's actually a good transition. So, you get a different opportunity. So let's talk about the company you did buy. Let's talk about first why it was attractive to you, and then what did you learn through navigating the deal? Was there any special scenarios that you had, especially with the COVID pandemic and PPP loans and all that kind of stuff? So I just asked you a lot of questions in one. So let's just start about, what was it about this company you ended up buying that made it very attractive to you?
Yeah. So after the paper company, it's mostly a non-repeat business customer. They sell a lot directly to DIY. And so I was looking for something with recurring revenue, so I don't have to go out and, acquire a new customer, sell them something once, and then start the process over again. So recurring revenue was important to me. And I've got a mechanical engineering degree, and like I said, I've been a plant manager, so I'm aware of building controls and things like that at a facility level. And so HVAC seemed interesting to me in, my daily search on Biz Buy Sell. And so I saw it. I was like, oh, recurring revenue is good. You've got installation, you've got service, you've got PMs, it kind of fits the model. And then in particular, the business was very interesting because it was a little bit undervalued, because the owner raised prices at the end of 2018, nearly doubled his SDE, but didn't have the track record to get the full multiple.
Right.
And so it was a little undervalued and, a little risky because you don't know if he's going to eventually lose customers, something like that. But and then we started originally talking in, I think it was April. So COVID was really just hitting. He'd laid off a couple of guys. Nobody knew where things were going. And so this is sort of a follow-up to your second part is, what came out of that, which was some really interesting aspects to the deal. Like there's a fairly large seller note, and part of the seller note is contingent upon my first 12-month revenue meeting his 2019 revenue numbers. And basically, if I'm within 5%, I pay him the entire loan amount. And if it's less, I get a discount, which is pretty substantial on a per dollar basis.
Which is that was good. Yeah. And it's a great way to solve the uncertainty in the world right now, right? Because back in March and April, we were talking in the deal board. We were like, if this is a 2-3 month thing and businesses come out like in a big V, then we'll recast the numbers and we'll stabilize the revenue. But now we're in month 6, 7, 8. I've lost count at this point. And I don't think we're going to see that sharp V coming out of it. So we're seeing a lot of savvy buyers like yourself solving that risk issue with something like an adjustable seller note. So very smart in this world. Yeah.
Yeah, it really worked out well. And the seller was very happy to do it because by the time we got to that point in the negotiation, he knew that his revenue was up 20% this year because everyone is doing something to their home because, their home and it's, 84 degrees in the house. And when it used to be, you leave the house and the cat is home and it's 84 degrees, nobody cared.
Yeah.
But now that everybody's home with the kids, they're like, it's too hot, I got to have air conditioning. So that was really good. So that was a really interesting aspect of the deal. What else was sort of non-standard? I guess the one thing that was interesting from my perspective after the close was we were told there was no AP, no AR, and no WIP.
Mm-hmm.
And that question got asked a dozen times. And it turns out there actually was AR, AP, and WIP. Mm-hmm. So part of the transition is me transitioning in, but it's also the old owner transitioning out.
Right.
I didn't anticipate. But we get along well. We're working it out. It's all fine. It's just, it was an interesting aspect to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And for those listeners, AR is accounts receivable, AP is accounts payable, and work in progress is WIP. You see that in some industries more than others, but it is, and I think to your point too, Leo, is I think one thing I've learned in this business is you think you know everything going into a deal, but you never have the whole story, right? So there's always going to be those little things you solve. And that's why there's a transition period, right?
So, that's exactly right.
So let's talk a little bit more about what you learned through this whole process of buying a business. So a lot of our listeners, most of our listeners are thinking about buying a business. We have some sellers too on the show, but what words of advice would you give people about what you learned through the process that are thinking about purchasing a business?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think the most important thing that I learned was it's going to be far more complicated than you anticipated, no matter how much due diligence you have to take. And there is some level of risk that you have to be comfortable with. Mm-hmm. In general, I'm relatively comfortable with a high level of risk. When I was at SBDC, I had a client who had looked at more than 200 companies. What he did was my interpretation is he's so risk adverse that in order to get the risk level down to somewhere where he felt comfortable, he would undervalue the business so much that he couldn't actually get a deal. Mm-hmm. And so, with that said, the advice that comes from that is figure out what level of risk you're comfortable with, and if it's going to get in the way of getting a deal, maybe you really won't buy a business, but you have to be somewhat comfortable at some point.
That's great advice. And we see that a lot. And because you're right, there is some risk. No deal's going to be perfect. And you're going to find something out after the fact that, you weren't quite aware of beforehand. And that's just, it's small businesses. There's so many moving pieces. It's just hard to get a grasp on everything, most of the stuff you can. Yeah. Well, it's a great learning lesson, Leo. And I'm so excited for you and your new business. I want to give you an opportunity to tell us about the business, tell people what you guys do, where you service, and if they're interested in working with you, how they can get in contact with you as well.
Great. Yeah. So it's J. Moody HVAC. Company has been in business since sometime in the 60s. Apparently Jay is still around. I'm the third owner. You can reach us at jmoodyhvac.com. We generally serve Leominster down to Worcester, out to Gardner, Bolton, beyond Bolton, sort of Westboro area, sort of that north central region. We'll travel about an hour. My understanding is we are the largest Mitsubishi mini split dealer in the state. We do more volume than anybody else. And, we do the gamut. We'll do mini splits, oil-fired furnaces, gas-fired furnaces, ductwork, new construction, apartments, you name it, we'll do it.
Awesome.
So yeah, come find us at jmoodyhvac.com.
Great. And we'll drop that into the show notes too. So if anybody in those areas in Massachusetts that want to do work with Leo and his company, you can reach out directly to them. Leo, thank you so much for joining us on the Deal Board today, sharing your story and also your expertise. I'm sure there's a lot of listeners that found the information you provided today valuable and helpful in their journey.
Oh, you're welcome, Jessica. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, Andy, do you know what time it is? It's time for our Deal of the Week.
Deal of the week. Sold.
Welcome back, everybody. On the Deal Board today, we have Gary Goldwasser with us. He's a senior broker at the Transworld office in Rocky Mountain, which is Denver, Colorado. He's been on the show before, but Gary, welcome back to the show.
Glad to be here.
Yeah. So today you're sharing a deal of the week with us in the landscaping industry. So I'll let you tell us a little bit about the business first.
Yeah, so this is a large landscape / nursery in the Denver metro area. It was doing about, before COVID, last year was doing about $8.9 million in revenue. Very large company, well-known, kind of in the south part of the Denver metro area.
Yeah. So how did you become engaged with them?
Yeah, so interesting enough, I had just moved and I was looking for landscapers. And at the time, this is kind of a crazy story, but at the time, he came over and was looking at my yard and putting the bid together. And I was on the phone with another potential buyer to sell another landscape company. And one thing led to another. He overheard my conversation. One thing led to another. And the next thing you know, he's like, I'd like to sell my business someday. Can we talk about that at some point? And that's how it all started.
Yeah, I love the story. It's all about this industry. It's all about relationships and connections, which actually kind of segues us nicely into who ended up buying the business from you.
Well, it is about building relationships, and I really pride myself on really digging into getting to know buyers and have a hot buyer list of buyers that I work with from time to time. This particular buyer, I've sold 3 businesses to so far, and just always have him kind of in my back pocket. And one of the great things about Transworld is our ability to have these buyers. And so I knew that he liked the landscape industry. And so he was my first call, and he was all excited about taking a tour, and he was ready to do an offer back in the spring. But because of it's hard to sell a landscape business in the spring because that's when they're busy. We had to wait till the season slowed down.
Okay. Well, that's good. So how did the deal come together? How did you guys structure it? Did you use any types of financing or anything like that?
So the buyer raised all the capital. It's kind of more of a private equity firm. So they raised all the capital, and there was 3 parts of it. So there's where it was money up front, a good chunk of money up front. The seller decided to keep 20% equity in the business, which was really a nice feature that the sellers liked it because that gave them skin in the game. But the buyers are going to plan on taking this thing from, $8.5 million to 20 to 25 million. So they'll get incremental dividends along the way up, and then they have the option to sell at any time, both sides. So that was kind of after 12 months, each the buyer and the seller have the ability to buy each other out. Mm-hmm. And then we had, because of COVID, it was going to be just a seller note for about 10% of the business. But because of COVID, it was hard this business grew so much in this last year that the buyers needed a little protection to know it wasn't just a COVID fluke. And so we turned that seller note into a seller earnout. And so they're lower numbers to hit, which I think the seller is going to hit. And the seller understood. He said, look, most landscape businesses grew about 25 to 30%. They grew, almost 60%.
Wow.
So
wow. Well, we've seen that a lot in COVID to solve on both sides, like fast growing companies and companies not doing well, is that earnout component really reduces the buyer risk. So it could be a risk for a seller, but it's all about structuring the right deal, which it sounds like you did for this seller. So let's talk a little bit about numbers. How much was the SDE or EBITDA in the business, and what was the total deal value at the end?
So the SDE was about $5 million. And the total deal value actually went, if they hit all the bogeys, they get their earnout and their 20%, it was about $18.3 million was the whole transaction.
Wow. Well, good day for the sellers, good day for the buyers. It sounds like they acquired a really great company, and a good day for you, Gary, too. We always love having you on the show and hearing your stories. You're such a great broker and really focused on that relationship. If someone wants to contact you to work with you in the future, how can they reach you?
Thank you. Yeah, they can reach me at gary@tworlddenver.com or at 303-748-7420.
Awesome. And we'll drop that into the show notes as well for all you listeners. Gary, thank you so much for coming back on the show. We look forward to having you soon.
Always good, Jessica. Thank you.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. And we have a special guest. And we always love talking to entrepreneurs about their stories of how they got into business and then how they eventually bought a business from us. And we do have a great story today. We have Dave Mena from Militello's Italian Bakery, which he purchased in the last year or so. I'll let him tell the story. But David, welcome to the show, and give us a little bit of background of how you got into business.
Thank you. Thank you for your interest. My background previously to the bakery was in retail. I actually pioneered some sauces, some Argentinian products under the brand Gaucho Ranch, and was successful at getting those products on the shelf and a lot of the supermarkets throughout the country. A couple of years ago, I was ready for something new, so I left that company, and with the proceeds of the sale of that company, I started looking for something, and then this opportunity with Militello's Bakery presented itself, and it's a wonderful company. It's been in existence for over 10 years, a family operation, and what I love about it is it's the exact opposite of what I was doing before. This is strictly wholesale, so we're vendors to universities, hospitals, hotels, and restaurants. So it's completely different. We're selling to it's not a brand that's in retail. It's a different type of operation, but it's a very successful company, and it has a ton of opportunity for growth.
Yeah. So buying a business is a little bit different than starting one from scratch. And you started the Gaucho Ranch products from scratch?
Exactly. Yeah, that was grassroots marketing from the ground up. Luckily, being located in South Florida, where there was a lot of independent retailers, there's obviously you got your Publixes and Winn-Dixie's and Whole Foods and people like that, but there's also dozens of independent supermarkets and gourmet markets that you can literally, walk into and just kind of pitch your wares. So if you're lucky and if you have something that they're interested in, you can take it and kind of cut your teeth that way and have a story to tell to the bigger retailers. And that's exactly what we did. I mean, in the beginning, we were literally doing farmers markets and things like that. But the good thing about Gaucho Ranch that helped us was the uniqueness of the product. There was simply no competition. And to this day, there still isn't a viable competitor in the chimichurri space. At least we are typically the only chimichurri sauce on the shelves for any given supermarket. So that really helped. And then it also helped that we had a quality product. We had really good branding. We came out with 4 different flavors as opposed to just 1 or 2 to kind of make it more difficult for somebody to really effectively compete against us and distinguish themselves. We try to cover kind of all the flavor profile bases that we could to make it hard to compete against us. And I think that strategy really, really worked. And a lot of the retailers, for example, Whole Foods or the Fresh Market, they carry all 4 flavors as opposed to just 1. So it gives you good presence on the shelf. It gives the consumer choice, and they use it for different culinary purposes, whereas, somebody might consider chimichurri just for steak. We had a Caribbean one that had cilantro and mint in it, for example, that people use more for white meats like chicken or even salmon or something like that. So right. It's a really great product that as I said, even after my exit, it continues to do tremendously well.
Right. So you start a business, you had a partner, and and you just kind of ran the course with that, and you felt like you wanted to do your own thing. And so, give me the thought of, hey, you didn't want to start a business from scratch again, right?
Exactly. I really was looking for something that was already established that you could kind of take and run with, and the whole process was actually really enjoyable. It was kind of daunting, but it was really enjoyable. I had looked at a couple other companies to the point of actually, reviewing their financials and things like that. And that whole process really is something that I found fascinating. But when I got to Militello, it was a no-brainer. I mean, you're talking about a company that, its clientele is just a who's who, from South Florida all the way up to Orlando. We're talking about the casinos in the area. We're talking about the stadiums, the convention centers, most of the major hospital chains. I mean, like I said, a who's who of accounts. So when I saw that, coupled with its history, its variety of products, we make virtually hundreds of different types of products here, whether it's breads or sweets, cakes and pastries and things like that. It just it's an incredible business. It really is, and it has the potential to really be much larger than it is now. So yeah, that process of actually selecting the company and delving into it and looking at its strengths and weaknesses was, like I said, it was an enjoyable process all the way to the fruition and the signing of the contract.
Yeah. So, and you had a great broker to work with. Tom Milana knows the business well. He's been doing this for a long time. Obviously, we're happy to have you here at Transworld as a customer, and we were happy to do that deal. But if someone was going to buy a business, and it was so funny, I just got off the phone with a new buyer not 5 minutes ago, and starting from scratch, and I tried to give them some advice here and there about how best to approach the marketplace. And you said at one point it was daunting, and at one point it's enjoyable. So why don't you just talk about that a little bit about it? What advice would you give, or what did you find daunting about it?
Well, as an entrepreneur, most entrepreneurs, I'd say, are multifaceted people. You have to be good at several things if you're going to be successful. In my personal opinion, especially if you're starting something.
Yeah, that's a great opinion. That's a great opinion. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, especially if you're starting something from scratch. I mean, my previous company, I was literally the marketing, the sales, the production, even the mechanic, and I mean that literally, for the equipment that we use. So yeah, you have to wear a lot of hats. And when looking at a company to actually acquire, it gets, as you can imagine, in the weeds as far as the financials are concerned. I actually leaned on a forensic CPA. As well as Tom Milano, a great broker. He was crucial in the whole process. But yeah, I built kind of a little team to help me, because it is something that it's easy to miss something, or if it's a new industry, for example, there's things that you might not even be aware of. So you really want to just make sure that it's definitely not something that you want to get into lightly. You really have to do your homework. And if possible, if you have the means to build, like I said, build a team that gives you a complete look at what you're doing and what the actual situation with the company is.
Yeah, well, I tell that to people all the time. You absolutely need a team. You have to have a CPA when you buy a business. You have to have a good attorney to buy business, and they should know what they're doing in the space. So it sounds like you had a good team as well to do it. And so let's real quick talk about the transition. Did you find it easy?
Well, this company, Militello, actually has. I went from having 12 employees to almost 40. So that aspect was, like I said, it was a daunting experience to come in here. I went from 10,000 square feet facility fee to a 30,000 square feet facility. So everything about it was just bigger, more complex. There's a lot. We have our own logistics, for example. We have trucks on the road, so there's a lot of new challenges. But I think if you pick an industry that you enjoy, and I was fortunate to say, okay, this is kind of my second act here. professionally, and you choose something that you enjoy. And if you select well, I think that it's an enjoyable process, however challenging it can be, and it is challenging. Like any venture, long hours, weekends, nights, et cetera, et cetera. But it's been incredibly enjoyable and satisfying, to be quite honest.
Yes, and it's it is rewarding, but it is hard work, and it is good to buy a business. I mean, I have started businesses just like you from scratch, and I've bought a few, and it is a lot easier to buy them, but it is a complicated process, and you need a good team. So. That's all great. And I want to thank you for coming on today. If somebody wanted to get in touch with Militello's and buy some product here in South Florida, or I don't even know how far you work.
We go all the way up to Orlando. So if you're a hotel or a hospital or university that whether it's pastries for your breakfast buffet or burger buns for your menu, is something that we can help you out with. You can find us online by just quickly Googling us. We're on social media, and it's very easy to work with us.
That's great. David, thank you so much for coming in today. I really appreciate it. Great story.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Have a good day.
Hey, Jessica, you know what time it is?
Money time?
Almost. It's time for listing of the week. Hey, welcome back, everybody. And we are talking listing of the week, and we have an international business, and it is, we are talking to Michael Ziff of Transworld Business Advisors of the UK and London. Michael, welcome back. And you have a good jewelry business you want to talk about.
Yeah. So this is a business with 6 shops on the south coast of England. It's been established since 1982. The owner has developed the business with 3 interesting themes. They have a great reputation in secondhand jewelry. The second thing that they have is repairs, which most of the jewelry chains don't have in both the United Kingdom and the States. And the third area is bullion dealing.
Right.
And therefore it gives a great opportunity for international buyers to buy into this type of business. He's been looking to sell it, and he's actually said to me that he's had more international interest in it when he was looking at doing it himself, but decided he wanted to bring professional help in.
Okay, so and how much is he asking for the business?
So he's asking for the business £2.8 million. He wants 1.5 million up front, and he'll do the rest on deferred consideration.
Great. And like you said, it's a good opportunity for someone who wants to immigrate.
Yeah. And they can get British citizenship based on their investment into this business, based on the inward investment rules into the United Kingdom.
Right. So, and they have a lot of stock.
There's 2.5 million pounds of stock at cost in the business.
Yeah, that's always with jewelry stores. They have a lot of inventory stock. So this sounds like a great deal. Michael, if someone wanted to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
So best 2 numbers are mziff@tworlduk.com or my mobile number, which is 0044 7712 867 215.
Great deal. Get it while it's hot. Thanks, Michael. Hey, we're back, and we have a special returning guest of course, Michael Shea from Transworld Business Advisors of Central Florida. And today we're talking about, kind of what's going to happen post this COVID crisis. And we're already starting to see some people and businesses looking to take opportunity. And we've seen this before. And so, Michael, you think that in the service business, this is a huge opportunity for people, right?
Yeah, I do. And, it goes back to you and I were here during the recession, and we were still closing deals, a large number of transactions in the service sector. We closed a bunch of stuff in lawn care, and we closed a bunch of stuff in pool care. And I think when we did our lawn care podcast, I talked about how my partner and I did a roll-up strategy similar to what you see with private equity companies, where we were buying small little service companies, specifically lawn care, and routing them together and getting efficiencies out of them and scaling the cash flows that way. And I think that's going to happen again. I'm already starting to get phone calls from people who have been laid off, or middle managers who are tired of the uncertainty of working for companies. That seems like such an odd thing to say, but are looking at, how do I, take control of my own destiny, and noticing that, oddly enough, it's the trades and the service businesses that are still deemed to be vital and are out there operating, while, some of the other more sophisticated companies aren't.
Yeah, well, people are still getting their pools cleaned, and certainly people want their lawns cut, and the grass is not going to stop growing. So, and we're coming up on summer, so the grass grows even faster, and that's all over the country. So there's opportunity and we've seen this before, right? A bunch of people get laid off, and either they might even get offered the higher backs, but some people choose not to go back, right?
Yeah, it's you think about me and you, we're in our 50s, we're young enough to still have a good tail on our careers, and old enough to have been through, this would be, if this turns into a recession, it would be our third. And it seems to be every 10 to 12, 15 years, this kind of disruption occurs. And, you kind of get tired of having your life put on hold and reset by things that aren't within your control. I literally Friday was just talking to a former veteran like myself, same age group, who lost his job a couple months prior to the recession to do a reorg. And, he's asking me for advice, and I'm going, you need to look at the trades, and you need to look at the service sector and realize, A, the margins and the opportunity that lies within there, and B, what skills you bring to those businesses. They may be unsophisticated, but oftentimes the skills of the corporate sector can be brought to bear to bring a whole lot more efficiency and better margins to the service sector. Like when I did the lawn thing, to me, it was a logistics business. And I figured out that the more efficient and the more dense the routes could become, the more profitable it would be. And it seemed intuitive, but people within the industry look at it differently because they grew up in the business from, zero to a certain level, and you operate at a different level when it's not at scale. So as we scaled it, we saw there were some opportunities. And I think that's going to happen once these middle managers and, quote, pre-baby boomers, take a look at where they're at today.
Right.
The opportunity that lays out there.
So what's the first step for them? What would you advise them to do at this point?
It's interesting. That ride along I did Friday with that gentleman, we were out doing the showing. I said, you got to get educated. And we gave him the ebooks. We directed him to this podcast. I said, start listening and learning. Suspend what you think you know from your MBA. In this case, this guy has two. And I said, you need to get streetwise and understand how things operate at a tactical level. How things really get done at the street is not how things get done on Wall Street. And not that one is right or wrong, is that you have to be super practical in times like this. And I said, the first step is to get educated. And that's often easier said than done because there's just so much information out there. But, in this case, he happens to know me. We've known each other for years. And there's some level of trust, being a known quantity and a trusted advisor with a history of performance. I'm just going, look, here's all the data, digest it, and then let's talk about it. So if we get people educated and then start having dialogue about the opportunities that they're seeing, they start asking the right questions, and sometimes the wrong questions, we can kind of, get their head straight, and then they can dial in on what's important to them.
Yeah.
This guy was interesting. He's a pilot. He's a trained naval aviator, and he kept gravitating towards really high-tech stuff. And I kept looking at his balance sheet going, you need to back off because of how the cash flows. And said, look at the mechanics of the numbers and what your needs are in terms of how much money you need to make or want to make. And then let's kind of, reset. It's easy to go down that rabbit hole of what what sounds sexy, right?
Right.
In times like this, things get real practical real fast. And I think money's practical. So I tend not to be too grandiose in how I portray these opportunities.
Yeah, so there's definitely winners going on right now. There's businesses that are continuing to go along very well, if not better than ever. So there will be opportunities out there. And if you're, kind of just got laid off and you're sitting around and you don't have anything to do, like Michael said, there's tons for you to do to get educated and talk to someone. I mean, with Michael, you're a great resource, but we have people across the United States, across the world, ready to help them maybe take an entrepreneurial step and, for their next life. Because listen, everybody's going to wake up and say, hey, listen, I got to live my life different, even just going through this.
Yeah. I mean, I think, look, one of the things we pride ourselves here is that we like to inform and educate. And if we do that right, then it's a good deal and the people are happy and they repeat. As brokers, we get to see things other people don't get to see. It's not superficial. We know where the bodies are buried. We've seen good operations and bad operations, and we can sometimes, without breaking confidentiality, kind of point out the deltas between one way of running the business versus another. And as I was describing it to this guy, I go, look, after the fourth or fifth time you see a business, doesn't matter. Things are kind of gel in terms of what you like and what you don't like and what facilitates and solves your problem economically. Now, if you can't, at 4 or 5, you're still lost, then you go back and reset at education again because you didn't learn, right? But I've always found like the 4th or 5th set of tires they kick, it clicks into place and they go, okay, we're on it. And the faster you get into it, it's not like we're going to be asking the right contract immediately, but start having those conversations early.
Yeah, and there's plenty of opportunities that will be coming. The phone is already starting to ring, as you said. So is there anything that you want to wrap this up with that you think is important to get out there right now?
Yeah, I mean, it was funny. I was going through some videos from back in 2008 and 2009 that you had done and that I had done. And, it's almost like you're prophetic, right? You kind of, your lessons from the last mistakes or the last hiccup, they ring true today. What's old wisdom is good wisdom. And I think we have some things to share, like, cash is king. Look at your cash flows. Look at your speed of payment. Low overhead, having three months at least of reserves. Those are all things that we talked about back in 8 and 9.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that graphic.
And in this circumstance, this isn't like it was in 8, right? There's the fundamentals of the economy are still solid. This is a biologic, and there's a short window here we're going to live. But so 3 and 4 look really, really good, but it's going to clean out a whole lot of people really, really quickly, and the customers are going to remain. They're just going to shift, right? So if you've got a strong balance sheet, you're going to be in a great position to catch stuff. So just because businesses fold or crumble or become an opportunity to acquire doesn't make them bad. Because oftentimes that's the bad owner, right? It's not the business that's bad; it's the owner that's bad.
We say that all the time.
So if you got that wisdom and you can see what's good in a business, you can grab it, fix it, let the sores and whatnot kind of slough off of the prior ownership, and be in position when things kind of take that lift in the 3rd and 4th quarter.
Right. All right. Well, Michael, what's the best way to get in touch with you if someone wanted to talk more?
Sure. Email, as always, is mike@tworld.com. The cell phone, 321-287-0349. And you can catch me on any one of the social media platforms or visit my website, www.tworld.com/Michael Shea.
Yes, we're going to have a very busy 3rd and 4th quarter this year. Thanks, Michael. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning into the show today. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends on social media. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on your favorite podcasting app. If you have questions, would like to appear, or have suggestions for topics for the show, get in contact with us through our website, thedealboardpodcast.com.